Unlock your day with powerful gratitude. Thank God for every hardship you overcame at dawn. The sun had barely crested the horizon when the town of Maplewood was embraced by an eerie silence. People locked their doors, their faces pale as they whispered rumors of the unspeakable horror that had unfolded just hours before. A neon green light had sliced through the night, illuminating the oak trees with a ghostly glow. It was then that the screams rang out painful, raw, echoing in the stillness. Nobody knew what had happened, but everyone felt it deep in their bones. It was as if the very air had thickened with dread. Tommy, an unassuming 12-year-old with a mop of curly hair, stood rooted near his window, his heart pounding against his ribcage. He had always been curious, always been drawn to mysteries, but this was something different, a chilling puzzle that seemed twisted and sinister. Not far from where he stood, a shadow flitted by, asking questions no one had answers to. People across the street peeked from behind their curtains, eyes wide with terror. Rumors of sightings danced through their minds. A creature? A spirit? How could something like this exist in a sleepy town like theirs? Tommy's chest tightened as he replayed the memory in his mind. The town's old clock tower, now shrouded in a swirling fog, seemed to pulse with a life of its own. The clock's ominous tick-tock had faded, replaced by an unsettling silence. He thought he saw something lurking in the gloom, waiting for the right moment to strike. What were they hiding? He felt a lump in his throat as fear intertwined with a strange exhilaration. The unknown held him captive, teasing him with a compelling promise of answers or more questions. The sun dipped lower in the sky, casting elongated shadows as whispers grew louder. Neighbors exchanged worried glances, fingers pointing toward the square where the light had flashed. What if they were drawing nearer to something terrible? Tommy felt a shiver run down his spine. Just then, a raspy voice from his best friend, Daisy, cut through the stillness. Did you hear it? The sound? Like a warning? It sent a chill through him. He clenched his fists, nerves firing like static electricity. Hey, before we continue with this amazing story, I need to give you an important heads up. Many subscribers have reported that YouTube unsubscribed them without warning. Take a quick second to check the red button below to make sure you're still subscribed to the channel. I'd hate for you to miss any of the exclusive content coming soon. And while you're there, smash that like button. It really helps me out with the algorithm. Oh, and tell me in the comments, which city are you watching from? I love getting to know every amazing person who is part of this community. Your participation makes all the difference. Let's connect. Tommy could feel the tension snapping like a tight wire in the air. The town was alive with murmurs and fears, tightening its grip around him. As darkness embraced Maplewood, an inexplicable pull drove him out the door. He couldn't shake the feeling that something was unfolding. No, something was waiting for him just beyond the glow of the streetlights. With every step, he felt the ground shift beneath him, a soft promise of secrets yet to be uncovered. What lay ahead was unknown and terrifying, but he had to know, even if it meant staring deep into the tempest of the night. The cool night air wrapped around Tommy like a shroud as he stepped onto the cracked pavement of Maplewood's main street. Each creak of the old wood porch seemed to echo like a whisper of caution, a subtle warning from the shadows lurking behind the storefronts. The streetlights flickered irregularly, bathing the scene in an unsettling strobe of light and darkness. Tommy's heart raced as he moved. The quiet felt electric, charged with anticipation and fear. What do you think we'll find? Daisy's voice trembled beside him, her eyes scanning the dark corners as if they held answers. He shook his head, trying to swallow the lump of uncertainty lodged deep in his throat. I don't know, he admitted, his voice barely above a whisper. Just then, a shrill howl shattered the blanket of night, a sound that was neither human nor animal, but something in between. The air seemed to freeze. Tommy's breath hitched, panic sparking every nerve in his body. He glanced at Daisy, her face pale as moonlight reflected off her wide eyes. We shouldn't be out here, she pressed, glancing back toward the safety of their homes. But some primal instinct lured Tommy onward. We have to see what happened. People are scared. What if we can help? His voice was firm, though doubt fluttered in his chest. As they neared the square, the fog moved thicker, wrapping itself around them as if trying to pull them back. They reached the fountain in the center, where the green light had pulsed earlier. Water flowed sluggishly, glinted with a faint trace of that otherworldly glow. It was as if the fountain was both alive and cursed. What was that light? Daisy asked, shivering. As if summoned by her words, a distant thud resonated, echoing from the direction of the clock tower. Tommy's stomach dropped. "Let us check it out," he said, but in his heart, he already knew they were crossing a threshold from which there might be no return. The clock tower loomed ahead, its silhouette jagged against the starless sky. Pushing through the darkened streets, they arrived at its base, where an ancient door stood cracked ajar. The rusty hinges screamed under the slight pressure, echoing into the hollow interior. Tommy apprehensively nudged the door wide enough for them to slip through. Inside, the staleness weighed on them like a burden. Dust motes danced in the faint light that fought to penetrate the gloom. As he stepped further, Tommy felt his guts churn. Shadows flitted just beyond his vision, teasing him with the promise of revelation. "Something isn't right," he murmured. "Tommy, look," Daisy whispered, pointing to the wall inside. Graffiti was scrawled in a haphazard way, simple shapes and symbols that twisted and turned into a chaotic message. In the center was a label, "Beware the Keeper." The hairs on the back of Tommy's neck prickled. What does it mean? His voice shook as he leaned closer. Each mark seemed to pulse with latent energy, a threat barely contained. And just then, the clock chimed midnight, its deep sound vibrating beneath their feet, transforming the eerie quiet into chaos. Something stirred in the depths of the darkness. Heavy breathing reverberated off the walls as a figure emerged, cloaked in shadows, eyes akin to burning embers. Tommy's heart thumped viciously. This wasn't just a mystery anymore. It was a nightmare coming to life. "Who dares disturb my domain?" The figure's voice slithered through the air, pulling them into a vortex of dread. Tommy swallowed hard, adrenaline flooding his veins. "We need to go," Daisy started, but it was already too late. The Keeper had awakened, and they had unwittingly crossed into his world. What fate awaited them now in the clutches of this ancient guardian? The air in the clock tower thickened, wrapping around Tommy and Daisy like a heavy fog. They stood frozen, eyes locked on the figure emerging from the shadows. The Keeper loomed, cloaked in a darkness that seemed to pulse with an almost sentient energy. His voice was like sandpaper scraped against a rock, grating but oddly melodic. "Your curiosity is both commendable and foolish," he hissed, stepping into the dim light. His face was obscured, features shifting like smoke in the night. Tommy felt his heart thud, an erratic metronome counting down to something unavoidable. "What do you want?" Tommy managed to choke out, his throat dry as dust. The Keeper smiled, though it didn't reach his eyes. "It is not what I want. It is what you seek." Daisy gripped Tommy's arm, the pressure of her fingers sending a wave of warmth through him. "We were just wondering about the light. People said there was danger." A wave of despair rides the winds in Maplewood, the Keeper said, his voice rising and falling like the air itself was alive with his words. "You have come to taste a fragment of its power, a whisper of the truth that lurks beneath the surface. But be warned, not all truths are sweet." Tommy's stomach churned further. "What do you mean?" He felt anger flare, pushing through his fear. "We're just kids. We wanted to help." "Help?" The Keeper's laughter sliced through the air. "You're here to uncover secrets better left buried. It is a cold hand that guides you. Curiosity is often a harbinger of doom." His eyes flickered, aglow with a light that seemed to reflect 1,000 forgotten sorrows. A chill swept through the chamber. "Please," Daisy pleaded, her voice wavering. "We don't want trouble." "Trouble?" The Keeper echoed mockingly, gliding closer. He reached towards them, and Tommy's instincts screamed at him to run. But where? In that moment, the room trembled, shadows coiling tightly around them. The air thickened like syrup, making each breath a labor. I offer you a choice, the keeper continued, voice lowering to a conspiratorial whisper. You may return to the life you knew, ignorant of what lurks beyond the veil, or you can stay, dive deeper, and wrestle with nightmares to awaken the truth. Tommy's mind raced. Ignorance or knowledge? Safety or revelation? The weight of the decision crashed over him like a wave, dragging him under. What happens if we choose to stay? Then you shall learn of the keeper's burden, he replied, his lips twisting into a sly grin. You will bear the knowledge of our past, and perhaps it may turn into your future. But tread lightly. The path is fraught, and once taken, there is no return. Daisy stepped closer to Tommy, her face pale. What is the truth? She whispered. The keeper's eyes glinted with malice. Ah, sweet Daisy, truth is a twisted vine. It strangles and chokes the purity of the soul. To know it is to become it. Suddenly, a deafening crash echoed from outside, shattering the fragile stillness. The old clock began to swing wildly, chimes ringing out violently. The walls vibrated, and in that moment, Tommy felt a surge of energy radiate from the fountain outside. It pulsed like a heartbeat, drawing his attention away from the keeper. I will decide for you, the keeper intoned, his voice rising in pitch as he extended a hand, the shadows thickening around him, swirling like predator and prey. Before he could unleash whatever dark magic he intended, the crashing intensified, echoing through the tower. Tommy's mind snapped to survival. Daisy, we have to get out. Now. As they turned to escape, the keeper's expression shifted, fury etched into his shadows. You will regret this choice. His words reverberated as the door slammed shut behind them, plunging them into utter darkness. Tommy and Daisy were left breathless, trapped. As they felt their way back to the entrance, the echoes of danger loomed closer. Outside, the clock tolling a death knell, something sinister brewed in the depths of the night. What awaited them beyond the door? Had they truly escaped the keeper's grasp? Fingers trembling, Tommy pushed against the door, feeling the cold would resist his efforts. He turned back to Daisy, fear etched on her face, eyes wide with panic. We need to find another way out, he whispered urgently, his heart racing as loud as the clock's frantic chimes. The darkness closed in around them, almost suffocating. What about the keeper? Daisy's voice shook. He is not just going to let us leave. Then we don't give him the chance. Tommy took a step back, calculating. He could hear the low rumble of thunder outside, an ominous warning that matched the fear curling in his stomach. Let us find a window or something. They fumbled in the gloom, their hands brushing against cold stone walls. The air smelled damp, thick with stale memories of time long forgotten. Each step felt like an echo, amplifying the weight pressing down on them. Suddenly, a flicker of light danced across the wall. Tommy stopped. Did you see that? Daisy squinted, her breath hitching. What if it's him? Or it could be our way out. Fueled by adrenaline, Tommy followed the shifting glow. The shadows twisted cruelly around him, the very darkness seeming to throb with anticipation. They reached a narrow window, framed by dust and grime. It's cracked open, Tommy exclaimed. He pushed against it. The window squeaked, a sound that seemed too loud in the oppressive silence. A sharp breeze swept through, carrying the distant sounds of chaos outside the clamor of the townsfolk. Screams punctured the air like knives. What is happening? Daisy asked, her voice trembling. We have to hurry. With one final shove, the window creaked open. The moonlight spilled inside, illuminating their faces with an eerie glow. Tommy climbed first, hoisting himself onto the ledge. Simon, we can make it. Daisy scrambled after him, her legs shaking. They clambered onto the roof, the cool night air biting at their skin. Below, the town was barely visible, a writhing mass of shadows and chaos. Look, Daisy gasped, pointing towards the fountain. Its waters glowed with an unnatural light, pulsating like a living heart. What is happening down there? Instinctively, Tommy felt drawn to it. We need to find out. It might connect to whatever that keeper was talking about. Tommy, wait. but he had already started to move across the slanted roof. A sudden roar of wind sent a jolt of fear through him. He lost his footing, scrambling to regain balance, fear gripping his throat. "Tommy!" Daisy's voice rang clear, cutting through the fog of panic. But he steadied himself, squeezing his eyes shut as he fought to control his racing heart. Just then, the earth beneath them trembled. A shock wave rolled through, sending ripples across the rooftops. "What was that?" "I don't know, but we have to go. Now." As they pushed forward, the clock tower itself shuddered violently behind them. The noise of gears grinding echoed ominously, the very structure protesting against their escape, as if it were alive and aware of their defiance. Suddenly, a figure emerged from the shadows at the edge of the roof. The keeper. His presence poured like ink into the light, a vortex of dread. "You think you can escape the truth?" he hissed, voice trailing into the wind. Tommy's heart raced anew. "We have to go." He pulled Daisy back toward the gaping void where the window had been. "Don't look back," Daisy urged. But the keeper's voice clung to them, vibrating through the very air. "Your journey has only just begun." Without another moment's pause, they leapt from the roof, the promise of danger on their heels. As the ground rushed up to meet them, Tommy let out a primal scream, ready to face whatever awaited below. But would the leap bring freedom or despair? The ground felt like a slap against their bodies. Tommy hit first, rolling to the side just as Daisy landed beside him, gasping for air. The street was empty, cloaked in shadows, but their adrenaline ignited senses dulled by fear. "Get up," Tommy urged, wincing as he pushed himself on all fours, the pavement scraping his palms. He helped Daisy to her feet, their eyes darting to the clock tower above where the keeper still lingered, his figure now a ghostly silhouette against the moonlit sky. "We need to move," Daisy cried, her voice tight with anxiety. Distant screams echoed through the darkened streets like wails escaping from the depths of hell. Something terrible was unfolding in their town, and they could no longer afford the luxury of doubt. They sprinted down the alley, the weight of uncertainty heavy on their shoulders. Tommy glanced over his shoulder, half expecting the keeper to loom behind them. But nothing followed, only an unsettling silence wrapped around the streets, broken here and there by the shouts of chaos. "We can't just run aimlessly," Tommy panted, struggling to catch his breath. Desperation clawed at his chest. "We need to find out what's really happening, how the fountain plays into this." Daisy nodded, eyes wide, her terror palpable. What if the keeper has something to do with it? Maybe it's his doing. As they turned another corner, they spotted a flickering light coming from a nearby storefront. They crept closer, the scent of burnt wood and something acrid in the air. The storefront windows, usually welcoming, now felt like the eyes of a monster, revealing only shadows within. "Should we check it out?" Tommy whispered, peering in. Daisy took a hesitant step back. "What if it's a trap? Then we one T get caught," he argued, the determination in his voice stronger than his fears. "We need answers." He pushed the door open slowly, its creak echoing like a clarion call through the dreadful stillness. Inside, the dim light revealed remnants of a cozy shop that had turned into a battlefield. Shelves were overturned, papers scattered like fallen leaves. In the center, they saw a figure hunched over a man, frantically scribbling notes. His unkempt hair framed a forehead lined with worry. "Who are you?" Tommy demanded, advancing cautiously. The man whipped around, eyes wild and afraid. "You shouldn't be here," he rasped, breath quickening. "He'll find you. You must leave." "Wait." Daisy stepped forward, hands raised. "We need to know what is happening in the town." "A curse," he hissed, eyes darting toward the door. The keeper unleashed something far worse than himself. "The fountain is the key. It's a portal to summon for what should remain buried." "What do you mean?" Tommy took a step closer, drawn in by the urgency in the man's voice. "A creature stirs beneath the fountain." The man clutched his notebook tightly. "It hungers for freedom, and it will only find it through human sacrifice." The ground trembled beneath them. a low rumble that seemed to echo the owner's words as if the very earth groaned in response. "Tommy, we need to get out," Daisy shouted, panic flooding her eyes. Before he could respond, the lights flickered violently, plunging them into darkness, and an unearthly howl split the night. The air turned cold, a shiver ran down Tommy's spine, recognizing the sound vibrating through him like barbed wire. "What is that?" he gasped, eyes straining to pierce the gathering shadows. Then, a soft glow emerged from the back of the shop, brightening the space and illuminating a previously unseen door. The man's face had gone pale. "This way," he cried, but terror surged in his eyes. "Quick, the LLB here." With a jolt of uncertainty anchoring their feet, Tommy grabbed Daisy, their eyes locking for just a moment before they dashed toward the mysterious light. Behind them, something twisted in the shadows, its presence both suffocating and bone-chilling. They couldn't look back. Not now. Why did they feel this familiar pull? What would they uncover should they step over that threshold? And most importantly, would they survive whatever was chasing them? They burst through the door like marionettes cut from their strings, stumbling into a cramped, dimly lit hallway. The air felt thick and oppressive, almost as if it were alive, drawing them in with an insidious grip. The glow faded behind them as they dashed further into the unknown, each heartbeat echoing in their ears. "Where are we?" Daisy whispered, glancing around with wide, frightened eyes. The walls were old, covered with peeling wallpaper, and the floorboards creaked beneath their hurried steps. Each noise felt amplified, as if the very building was holding its breath, waiting for something terrible to happen. "Just keep moving," Tommy urged, his voice tight with urgency. They rounded a corner and skidded to a halt. Before them loomed another door, this one heavy in oak, adorned with intricate carvings that seemed to writhe in the half-light. It was beautiful yet ominous. "What are we supposed to do now?" Daisy's voice quivered, fear painting her words. The howl outside had faded, but left a haunting echo that clung to the edges of their minds. "Maybe we should open it?" Tommy suggested hesitantly. His hand hovered over the doorknob, a chill running through him to thought of facing whatever lay beyond. "No, what if it's a trap?" Daisy countered, stepping back, but Tommy was already turning the knob, feeling an electric tension in the air. With a reluctant push, the door creaked open, revealing another chamber bathed in an eerie light. A round room stretched ahead, its walls lined with shelves filled with dusty books and peculiar glass vials. At the center stood an ornate table, covered in strange symbols and what looked like a map that seemed to pulse almost as if it were alive. "It's like a ritual space?" Tommy breathed out, peering closer. The air buzzed, vibrating with energy that made the hairs on his arms stand on end. "These symbols they matched the ones engraved on the fountain." Daisy stepped closer, eyes narrowing. "We need to copy them. Maybe they hold the answers to stop whatever the Keeper unleashed." Suddenly, a loud crash echoed from behind them, sending electric shocks of fear through their veins. The door swung shut, sealing them in the room, the sound reverberating like thunder. The light flickered, casting erratic shadows that twisted and coiled like tendrils reaching for them. "Tommy!" Daisy's voice was sharp, panic sparking her words. "What if we're trapped? This wasn't supposed to happen. What if we're safe here?" He argued, his own heart racing. "We can't stop now. We need to figure out how to stop what's coming before it's too late." Just as he moved toward the table, the room seemed to shift. The shelves rattled, and the vials began to glow, illuminating the symbols' grotesque figures that looked like half-formed creatures. They spiraled and twisted wildly, as if waiting for the right moment to break free. "It's all connected," Tommy realized, a dread pooling in his stomach. The Keeper summoned something he couldn't control. "We have to figure out how to seal it back before it takes more lives." Daisy looked back at him, eyes glinting with determination laced with fear. "You take the notes. I'll check the map. We can't let fear win." Before they could begin, the ground shook violently beneath them. The shelves trembled, and from the depths of the shadowy corners, they heard it again, the howling, closer and more feral. A chill gripped their souls. "Tommy, we don't have much time," Daisy screamed, her voice barely rising above the cacophony, her eyes brimming with terror. As they frantically searched for any clues, reality twisted around them. Whatever was beneath the fountain was waking, yearning for freedom, and they were in its crosshairs. Would they find the key to stopping it? Or would they be just another pair to succumb to the Keeper's curse? From the trembling shadows, darkness inched closer, and they could only brace for the storm that was about to break. The ground beneath their feet bucked violently, and Daisy's heart raced as if it were trying to escape her chest. She stumbled backward, nearly losing her footing. "Tommy, help!" He grabbed her arm, pulling her closer to the table. "We need to focus. Whatever that noise is, we have to figure this out." The words barely escaped his lips when another crash echoed through the chamber, sending dust and debris spiraling into the air. The walls seemed to close in, shadows stretching like claws ready to grasp them. A sense of urgency clawed at him as he fumbled for the notes he had spotted earlier. His fingers grazed the papers scattered across the table while Daisy scanned the flickering map, her brow knit with concentration. "Look at the signs," she shouted, her voice rising above the chaos. "These patterns, they're similar to constellations. Maybe we can align them somehow." Tommy squinted at the glowing symbols, each one pulsing ominously. "Say it again. We align them how?" His mind raced, desperately searching for the piece that could fit. The howling filled the room, deep and jagged, like a beast that had been caged for too long. As Daisy traced her fingers over the map, the ground shook again, this time more violently. It felt like the building itself was tearing apart. "Over here, align the 3 symbols at the center." She pointed, her eyes wide with fear. "That S where we'll draw power from." He nodded, determination settling over his shoulders like armor. Tommy hurried to her side, both of them bending over the table, his breath fast and shallow. "Okay, I'll rewrite these symbols. You keep track of the path." With shaking hands, Daisy grabbed a piece of chalk from the table and began sketching rapidly, her confidence momentarily overshadowing her fear. Then the howling stopped. An eerie silence descended, swallowing the sounds of their frantic movements. The air thickened, wrapping around them like an unseen predator. Tommy's heart thundered within him, every beat a reminder that time was slipping through their fingers. "Do we do something wrong?" Daisy's voice dropped to a whisper, her gaze darting towards the door they had entered through. The heavy oak was now a menacing silhouette against the soft glow of the vials. Then, almost as if in response to her question, the air crackled. The light from the vials changed, shifting to a sickly, glowing green. Something stirred in the shadows, a whisper of malevolence brushing against the edges of their consciousness. "We need to hurry. Whatever that thing is, it doesn't like us here," Tommy urged, his urgency tightening like a rope around his throat. Daisy gasped, fear pulling her face taut as she scribbled faster. "It's almost done. Just a bit more, come on." Suddenly, with a bone-chilling scream, the vials exploded, the glass shattering and sending a wave of ethereal light cascading over them. Shadows morphed into grotesque shapes, materializing from the depths. Claws reached out, whispering promises laced with terror. "Tommy, we can't let it get us," Daisy yelled, fighting to hold her ground against the encroaching darkness. As the wave of light swirled around them, Tommy's instincts kicked in. "Stand back. I will finish this." He glanced at the now-forming pattern, then ripped the chalk from her grip, drawing furiously. The symbols ignited with energy, capturing the fierce light and filling the room with an otherworldly glow. Heart pounding, he stepped back. Would it work? Or would they be drawn into eternal darkness? The room shook again, more violently this time, a tremor of primordial rage spilling forth. The walls screamed, as if each crack echoed the anguish of ages lost. Just as the chaos reached a fever pitch, a tremor of hope ignited within him, merging courage with resolve. "Daisy!" he yelled, adrenaline coursing through him like fire. "Get ready." At that moment, the shadow lunged, a whirl of dread and rage. Daisy's scream pierced the air as the waves of darkness surged, lunging toward them as if to swallow them whole. In one heart-pounding instant, the symbols began to glow brighter, illuminating the onrushing dark. Yet doubt not at him. Would this ritual hold against what was unleashed? It was now or never. With a final, desperate flourish, they activated the binding runes, and the room erupted in wild energy. But did they hold the power to contain the unleashed forces, or would they amplify the chaos creeping into their world? As the light flickered and twisted, something unleashed roared in fury, and Tommy could almost make out a dark figure shadowed in the haze. Did they really have control, or were they simply feeding the beast? The room exploded in radiance, a blinding white light chasing the shadows back into the corners. Tommy felt heat radiating from the symbols, pulsing like a heartbeat, and for a fleeting moment, it seemed as if they had gained the upper hand. But that moment shattered as the darkness retaliated, swirling in grotesque shapes, shrieking with a voice that clawed at the edges of sanity. It was as if every regret, every fear Tommy had ever buried came crashing back to him. He stumbled back, clutching his head, overwhelmed. "Daisy!" he screamed through the chaos. "Stay focused." Daisy's eyes darted around, wild with panic but somehow fierce with determination. "We haven't lost yet," she shouted back, rallying. "Just hold the formation. Channel the energy." Sparks flew from the symbols as they ignited further, violet and crimson mixing in a dazzling display of light. Tommy steadied himself and gripped Daisy's arm, their connection grounding him against the rising tide of despair. "We're together in this," he said, trying to drown out the demonic howl surrounding them. Suddenly, a dark abyss tore open to their left, spewing forth shadows that writhed and hissed, echoing with the torment of lost souls. Time felt frozen, the air thickening around them, making every breath a battle. "It's coming for us," Daisy spat, pulling Tommy closer, her breath hitching. He fought against the panic rising in his throat. "We need to amplify the symbols. Use the energy from the vials." He knew they had only one chance to turn the tides. He could see clearly now the connection between the symbols, the way they intertwined, urging him to trust his instincts. Daisy nodded, determination sharpening her features. "I'll keep drawing. You keep channeling the energy." With renewed vigor, Tommy faced the swirling mass of darkness. He focused all his thoughts, every ounce of emotion, fear, love, desperation into the symbols. The room crackled with power, and the glowing shapes began to quiver, pulsating to the rhythm of his heart. With shaky hands, Daisy pulled back on the chalk, her face set in concentration. The shadows were blurring the line between their reality and something far more sinister, but they pressed on. "Tommy, hold it steady." The moment I finish a sharp howl interrupted her, echoing through the chaos. The shadows lunged, forming a grotesque figure, a monstrous face filled with rage and despair, an embodiment of everything they feared. "You dare!" it shrieked, each word laced with venom. The darkness lashed out, tendrils snaking towards them. Tommy felt the pull, the icy breath of the creature sending chills through him. "Daisy!" he yelled desperately. "Hurry! You got to finish this." She drew in a breath, her face flushed with effort. "I'm almost there." Just a little more as she drew the last line of the final symbol. The energy erupted in an explosion of light. The shadows recoiled, screeching as their dark form began to meld away under the fierce blaze of illumination. But just as victory seemed within reach, the creature unleashed a furious roar, sending a shockwave rippling through the air. The ground shook violently beneath their feet as the very essence of dread fought back, latching onto their thoughts and fears. Tommy staggered, breathless, filled with doubt again. "Is it enough?" he whispered, fear creeping back in despite the brightness around them. The walls vibrated as the creature fought against the binding, rage blending with despair like a storm poised to break. Daisy grasped his hand tightly, determination etched in her eyes. "We mustn't falter. We can't. Not now." But from the heart of the light, a shadow began to grow, darker than before, a horror waiting to be unleashed. Tommy held his breath, his heart racing. Were they truly free, or had they unlocked something even more terrible? "Daisy, get ready," he yelled as the tension twisted in the air like a coiled snake, preparing to strike. What lay ahead could change everything. Would they fight for their lives, or fall into the abyss they had opened? The shadows reeled and collapsed, but their retreat was deceptive. An ominous pulse throbbed in the air, sending tremors through the very walls of the room, vibrating with a malevolent energy that made Tommy's skin crawl. The light had surged, but the darkness was still there, lurking, waiting. Tommy's chest felt tight, each beat an echo of his mounting fear. He could feel Daisy's grip tightening, her fingers trembling against his. "What did we just unleash?" she muttered, eyes wide as the oppressive silence hung heavy around them. In that heartbeat of uncertainty, the monstrous figure before them twisted. The shadows reshaped, solidified, and suddenly it was there again, a grotesque face glaring back at them, its mouth a gaping maw filled with jagged teeth. "You thought you could imprison me," it howled, rage and sorrow swirling together, each syllable striking like a hammer. "You've only made me stronger." Tommy felt a rush of heat and instinctively took a step back. "Stay close," he shouted, feeling as if the very fabric of their reality was about to rip apart. The darkness lunged toward them with an overwhelming force, like a tidal wave cloaked in despair. "Channel the symbols. Don't let it break through," Daisy screamed, her voice steely despite the panic flashing in her eyes. Tommy forced himself to remember the connection they had felt, the way the symbols had surged with their combined energy. "Focus, Daisy," he cried, trying to drown out the chaos. We drew strength from each other. Her breath hitched, the energy flowing from her fingers as she completed the intricate designs, each stroke of chalk flickering with life amid the encroaching darkness. The air shimmered around them as the symbols began to glow once more, radiating a vibrant light. But something was different this time. The dark figure twisted, contorting into more monstrous forms, a blot of dark fury filled with a cacophony of anguished screams. "Insolent children," it screeched, lashing out again. Tommy's heart raced as he realized how close they were to the edge. "Can we hold it?" he shouted, panic turning his voice brittle. He felt a knot tightening in his stomach, the presence of fear swirling dangerously alongside the dark energy. Daisy's face was pale, but her resolve burned bright. "We must believe. We can't let it use our fears against us," she declared, her voice cutting through the din together. Tommy took a deep breath, feeling the warmth of their connection. He closed his eyes for a moment, focusing on that bond, the love, the determination, the memories they shared. "We can do this," he shouted, his courage roaring back to life as they both extended their energy toward the symbols. The light intensified, flaring into a brilliant explosion once more. But instead of dissipating, it seemed to draw the shadows near. They writhed in agony, caught between two worlds, teetering on the brink of annihilation. "Let it come," Tommy shouted, gripping Daisy's hand tighter. "We fight together." With one final surge of power, they fused their energies completely, pouring every ounce of hope and determination into the symbols. The light blazed like the sun, swallowing the darkness alive, burning deeper and brighter. But suddenly, waves of doubt crashed over them. A voice emerged from the shadow, softer now, yet chilling. "You think you have one? This is just the beginning." Tommy's chest tightened as the darkness screamed again, lashing out with renewed vigor. The world around them began to crack, fractures of shadow swirling like a storm, threatening to consume everything they had worked for. "Daisy!" Tommy yelled, desperation clawing up his throat. "What do we do?" But as their eyes locked, the truth hung heavy in the air. The battle was far from over, and deeper horrors were yet to emerge. "Prepare yourself," Daisy shouted as the shadows converged, an ominous army of terror rising against them. What other evils lay hidden within the abyss they had awakened? Would their fight merely fuel the darkness? The weight of uncertainty pressed down as the storm raged, ready to unleash its fury. The monstrous roar of darkness echoed through the room as Tommy and Daisy fought to keep their ground. The shadows swirled like a tempest, eager to engulf them. But the pulsing energy of the symbols around the table became a beacon of hope. Together, they focused, their hearts beating in sync, creating a pulse of warmth that pushed back against the encroaching shadows. "Now, we channel everything we have," Tommy shouted, the fear clawing at him, but determination blazing like a fire within. He remembered the moment they first stepped into the tower, how curiosity had guided them. But now, it was a relentless spirit guiding them forward. With each pulse of energy, the symbols glowed brighter and brighter, almost as if they were alive, resonating with their determination. Daisy squeezed his hand tightly, her resolve unwavering. "We can't let it win. It feeds on our fear. We have to take that power back." Tommy matched her fierce gaze, and they both leaned over the table, pouring their fears into the symbols. Each breath synced, each heartbeat driving the life forward. The shadows screeched, a cacophony of voices rising as the dark figure twisted in defiance. Every ounce of negative energy that threatened to drown them was met by an equal amount of resilience. "Seal the light. Channel it," Tommy yelled, his voice rising above the clamor. As Daisy finished her chalk lines, the symbols exploded with power, vibrant colors pushing back against the darkness, encroaching on all sides. The blinding light illuminated the entire room, casting away the shadows, if only for a moment. Then the world shifted again. The dark figure howled, its face transforming into something more grotesque, a swirling mass of anguished faces and nightmare shapes. "You dare challenge me?" it shrieked, a voice that could shatter glass and freeze souls. Tommy and Daisy stood frozen for a heartbeat, the weight of its furious gaze pressing down like an anvil. "We're not backing down," Tommy shouted as a thought struck him. "Daisy, the fountain, it's the key. We must return there and bind the darkness." Understanding flickered in her eyes. "We're strong enough together. We can do this." In unison, they moved towards the exit, shadows still snapping at their heels. The room quaked and the walls groaned under the weight of their struggle. "Now!" Tommy yelled. They burst through the door, rushing down the dimly lit hallway. Behind them, the darkness roared, bent on consuming their every breath. Outside, the night air was electric with chaos. The fountain glowed ominously, the same unnatural hue as before, its waters swirling like a living entity. Townsfolk had gathered nearby, some holding torches, others peering with fear-stricken faces. "Tommy, Daisy," they shouted, urgency mixed with despair. Their hearts raced as they reached the fountain. Tommy dived towards its edge, eyes darting over the glowing symbols that had marked its surface. "We were right. The binding, we need to connect it all." He turned towards the crowd. "Everyone, we need your energy. Stand together and channel your hope. We must fight this as one." With no hesitation, they formed a human chain, hands linking together. Daisy positioned herself beside Tommy, their hands united over the fountain's surface. "This is our chance," she cried, her voice steady despite the tremors around them. Tommy and Daisy closed their eyes, focusing on every soul connected to the fountain. The fear and desperation that pulsed through them found a counter in their shared hope and strength. For one piercing moment, they felt unity, a surge of power radiating up their arms. "Now, to the symbols," Tommy shouted, and, as one, they pressed their hands against the glowing shapes etched on the fountain. The energy exploded, pulling light from every participant, cascading into the fountain like a river breaking free from a dam. The shadows recoiled, the darkness shrinking back, screeching their primal rage. With a deafening roar, the entity that sought to tear apart their world writhed, struggling against the binding force they forged. "Together, we stronger together," Daisy urged, her voice cutting through the cacophony. Tommy felt the resistance weaken, shadows swirling erratically before dissipating into wisps of smoke. The air was charged with determination as the two of them focused what remained of their strength. Finally, with one last surge, the darkness howled its final curse, swirling violently before imploding into itself. The shadows shrieked, disappearing into the glow of the fountain, leaving behind a stunned silence. As the glow settled, the townsfolk erupted into cheers, relief flooding the air like fresh rain. Tommy and Daisy gasped, the weight of their shared fear trailing behind them like fallen leaves. "Did we do it?" Daisy whispered, her eyes wide as the realization washed over her. Tommy turned to her, a smile breaking through. "We did. We stood together," he exclaimed, pulling her into a tight hug, their victory sweeter than any words could capture. As dawn broke over Maplewood, casting warm light over the fountain, they found themselves surrounded by family and friends. Each face reflected the gratitude and relief that surged through the air. And in that moment, Tommy understood the Keeper's darkness had been defeated, but more importantly, they had discovered a strength within themselves, anchored in their bond and unwavering courage. With tears glistening, they exchanged solemn promises never to give in to fear and to always embrace the light together. As the sun warmed their faces, the town of Maplewood emerged anew, brighter and more vibrant. They had faced the Keeper and emerged victorious. "We'll always protect this place," Tommy whispered to Daisy, his heart swelling. And as they stood shoulder to shoulder, ready to face whatever came next, they knew this together. Anything was possible. Now, if you enjoyed the conclusion of this wild ride, you need to subscribe immediately to the channel so you don't miss the next exclusive stories. Smash that like button now to feed the algorithm, and share your thoughts below. I want to hear your reactions and theories about the ending. And don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this. Your support makes all the difference. Let us continue this journey together.